Alexandria, it's so good to welcome you today to LinkedIn Live. How are you?
Hi, Kelly. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Yes, I think the last time you and I were together, we were actually at the Sphere in Las Vegas, which, if any of those who are joining live have not seen, I thought was an unbelievable experience of like truly immersive tech in action. I don't know what you thought.
I thought so too, and there was no one better to be there with than
Yeah.
you. So thanks for inviting me. We were in Vegas doing work stuff, and this was a great way to take a little breather and also immerse ourselves in what's going to become more common in our lives in the future. So if
Yes.
you haven't been to the Sphere, check it out. It's worth going.
Now, Alexandra, I'd love just to spend a couple minutes before we dive into the content around how people who are joining us today can work smarter. You just told me that this is actually, I like see you all the time. So I was surprised that this is your first LinkedIn Live. So tell the LinkedIn community, those of you who don't know, go ahead and do yourself a favor. Follow Alexandria on LinkedIn here. She's a workforce futurist, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, Kelly, you know this, but for those who are listening, I am a workforce futurist. And what that basically means is that I look at trends and signals that are percolating up through the marketplace, through society, through business, and try to help organizations, and that's both public and private sector, make an educated determination about what has the greatest potential for disruption. And I've been doing this in the workforce arena for about 20 years. So it's been really fun to see what forecasts come to fruition and what does not. And of course, I don't have a crystal ball, nothing is exact, but I find that if you're paying attention, you can definitely identify some of the things that are likely to occur and put steps in place so that you can mitigate any risks and be prepared for the future. And it's a really, really fun career.
I love that. Now, I want to put you, what do you think? Like, do you have a prediction that you've made that has been the most accurate? Like, do you have like a favorite prediction you've made throughout your career?
My favorite prediction,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be talking about it a lot today, probably,
Okay.
is around distributed work. Back
Oh,
in
interesting.
2018, actually, Kelly, how you and I met
Yep.
was when I wrote the book called Humanity Works. That was
Yes.
written in 2017, published in 2018. It talks about why the conditions in place were really perfect for us to move to a distributed workforce. And at the time, we had no idea what the impetus for this would be. We didn't know if it was going to be a climate related event that would prevent
Mm.
people from going in person. We didn't know if it would be a pandemic, but we knew that something was likely to happen that would push global business into this place of being able to leverage the available technology, which had been around for several decades at that point.
Yeah.
And so that's my favorite prediction because we had a book about it in 2018, and then of course in 2020, it happened, and a lot of people were surprised.
Yeah. I love that. And that also like a book well before its time. I think like in hindsight now we can look back and see like to your point, like those were true predictions that
Mhm.
are unfolding today. So I want to dive in for those of you who are joining us. We're going to be unpacking. Alexandra was actually one of our key contributors and thought partners to the Upwork Research Institute this year, and most recently on our Work Innovator report. So I'm curious, Alexandria, from your perspective. I mean, you were talking about writing about, you said the book came out, was it 2018, 2017,
In
around
2018.
distributed work. And yet, like, what are the barriers of innovation today? It feels like we're continuing on this hamster wheel of trying to get leaders and trying to make the business case. And I heard the other day, we still need more financial data to make the case. Like, in your mind, what are the true barriers to innovation that you're seeing today?
Well, we learned a great deal about these in our Upwork research in 2024. And there are a couple significant factors at play here. First, companies are really struggling with managing resources in a way that's compliant, in a way that's taking into account regulations. And I think there's some analysis paralysis going on there.
Mm,
And also, organizations on the tech side will often decide, okay, I'm going to chase the shiny new object. And they bring it in, and then they realize it doesn't integrate into the existing technology infrastructure. So it's difficult to use. People don't know what to do with it, and they're confused about what to use when. So that's a
yeah.
factor that's at play too. I also like to say, and we found this in the research too, that one of the biggest barriers is that innovation isn't institutionalized. And what I mean by
Mm,
that is that there's not dedicated staffing, budgets, and infrastructure to support experimentation on a daily basis, and
yeah.
workers don't feel like they have the resources, don't have the autonomy. And there's also an element of fear that we
Mhm.
really can't understate. Organizations and employees are reluctant to buy into drastically different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Don't want to risk their jobs. Leaders don't want to rock the boat. When the company's livelihood's at stake, sometimes you're just focused on how to get through to
Yeah.
tomorrow versus how to do the best thing that will help you in the long run. And that's, of course, what our foresight practice is all about. It's about taking the time doing exercises like this so that we can be as prepared as possible.
Yeah. And I'm just going to, those of you who are joining us live, I'm going to call you in the comments. I'm going to try to do my best to also follow comments today. If not, we're going to get back to them right after Alexandria and I hop off this. But I'm curious, those of us who are joining right now, it's Alexandria and I, we're talking about Work Innovators, our most recent report and barriers. I'm curious, what is stopping you from innovating today at work? Is it what Alexandria just said, resource constraints? Is it more culture, psychological fear? So I'd just be curious to get a little bit of feedback from the audience too, because I think Alexandria, to your point, it's a spectrum of
Mhm.
what's blocking us today. Some of it's just blocking and tackling, which is the basics of their people don't have the right resources. They don't have enough time and space. And
Mhm.
others come to much more cultural perspectives around fear, as you mentioned.
Yeah, no, exactly. I would be interested in that feedback as well. Kelly, we
Yeah.
of course like to offer practical advice whenever possible. So, what do you think organizations can do to effectively engage their workforce in overcoming these barriers? So, even if they're not leaders, there are of course things that the individual can be doing. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to give some data and then just some anecdotal evidence too of a conversation I had recently to bring this to life. So, our data found in the Upwork Research Work Innovator report is that our work innovators, those that were actually overcoming these barriers that Alexandria just described, were those that were actively listening to their workforce. They were those that were like, and again, it sounds so simple and basic, and it reminds me to go back in my like MBA textbook back to the 1970s when Toyota was doing this in the front lines, but really doing some active listening, and especially those that are closest to the customer within your organization. And I think actually seeing them as your new R&D workforce. And I think so often we think of the back office and operations, and that to me is actually becoming where a lot of the R&D is living. And it's so funny. So I was on a phone call the other day with a bunch of executives, and they were lamenting, Alexandra, similar to this conversation that we're having of like, this drive towards efficiency. Workforce isn't innovating enough. They don't feel like there's enough productivity happening. They don't feel like they're capturing enough value. And, it was kind of going around in circles. And then finally I asked, I said, so has anyone surveyed or asked the workforce what's getting in the way or what they need right now to overcome this? And everyone looked at each other and said, well, no, we haven't. And so I think that's what's happening today in a lot of organizations is we've lost, for whatever reason, we went away from annual engagement surveys, which I think were probably a good thing because we need to be doing much more continuous listening. But as a byproduct of that, I do think we've lost that muscle in some of our organizations, and we're not doing that deep listening. I'll tell you what, people will tell you what's getting in their way if you ask them. And so to me, it's all about employee listening today and workforce, and more than just employees. Obviously, we're at Upwork, your contingent workforce, your contractors, people, your vendors that you're using. We should have as much understanding of those people as we do our customers today.
Mhm.
I don't know, any reactions to that or anything you think I missed?
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant point. And so often when we talk about the employee experience, we are focused on that full time worker
Yes.
and almost to the exclusion of everybody else. And the thing is increasingly we are seeing the rise of what I call rapid talent assembly, which means that you have a given project.
Yeah.
And in the context of that project, you're looking for the people with the exact precise skills that you need. Um, and so that could involve a team that is assembled with full time people, part time
Yep.
people, formerly retired people, subject matter experts, contract workers. And all of those people need to have some degree of employee experience, especially if the project involves interfacing with external constituents. You have to make sure that they're on board with what you're doing, that they understand what you're doing, and like you said, that they have provided feedback about
Yeah.
what you're doing. And I think one of the things, of course, with Upwork that we want to emphasize is that those workers and what they think and their perspectives are just as important because the work they're doing is just as important.
Yeah. And it's so funny, Alexandra. I remember we were at Deloitte together.
Mhm.
We were working with Jeff Schwartz, and I remember one of the key findings that we found was that, and this was not necessarily us. Let me give credit to where credit's due. It was the economist who were calculating this number, but that 94% of net new employment that was happening in the U.S. was not coming from full-time roles. It was coming from the alternative workforce.
Mhm.
And, us in the US, 1099. So I think those of you who are listening, and I see our chat is getting active here. First of all, I'd like to call on, where are my freelancers and contractors at? We'd love to see you. Tell us if you're a contractor in the chat. And then I implore anyone who's in the HR profession, we are desperate for a manual, for a leadership playbook that does get the employee listening experience right here. Because again, it's so much more when we're saying the word employee, it's not in that traditional sense, it's your entire workforce.
Mhm.
So, Alexandra, we've got a lot of people joining us today, and not everyone is going to be this executive leader, right? Not everyone's going to have the influence that they may need to actually invoke the change. What's your advice to that individual contributor today who's trying to navigate innovation? I think at the end of the day, most people want to be productive. They want to do the right thing. What's your advice today in this environment?
Well, regardless of what kind of individual contributor you are, because we were just talking about how there can be a variety, you could be a full-time employee, you could be a contractor. Regardless, it doesn't matter. I encourage you all to be mini futurists. There's
Mhm.
nothing that I do that's rocket science. There's nothing that I do that requires extensive training. The most simple thing that I can suggest is to look around.
Mhm.
Is there a process in your arena that needs tweaking? If so, do you have the skills to take it on? If not, is there a way you can get those skills? And even talking to your boss or team about new ideas can really further your reputation as being innovative, even if ultimately you can't move forward with your proposed improvements. And this last part is pretty important because, as we were saying, there are some barriers to
Yeah.
innovation. And there might be a time when you can't do what you know is best. So instead of getting frustrated, still continue to propose ideas because it only
Mm.
really takes one to make a tangible impact on your organization. And in the meantime, you can get a reputation as being the innovative person who is always looking for ways to improve things. And that can only be beneficial.
Yeah. It's funny, as you're talking, I think what you just said, I just want to like reinforce this to those that are joining us today, 'cause I think it's really
Mhm,
profound, especially in the age of AI, is
mhm.
sense making. Because that's
Yes,
what you're doing as a futurist, is you
yes.
are looking around, you're making sense of the different
Mhm,
dynamics and factors. And I
mhm.
don't know what your opinion is on this, but who knows? I would be careful making this prediction. I don't think AI today is sense making. I
No,
think it's regurgitating what has been, based on the knowledge of what has collected. I
yes.
don't know if it can actually sense make of what could be happening and what's for coming in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that, and in fact, when we talk about generative AI, that's precisely what it is. It's generating ideas based on the data it's already been given.
Right.
So it's really just a way of restating things. And what I have found about generative AI is that it's most beneficial when you're completely unfamiliar with a subject matter, when
Hmm.
you need to learn something from scratch, or you need to create content that you're not necessarily in your area of expertise. But when you really have deep knowledge of a subject, getting to that level of insight and that level where you can all of a sudden pull things out of your creative human brain, we are not at that point with AI. Now, may we be at that point in a few years? Certainly. I know we are moving toward what we call artificial general intelligence, but we're not there yet. So we still require people who are willing to give this stuff some thought and approach it from more than just a surface level. But it's a really great point. We're
Yeah.
not there with AI and sense making, and I love the way you put that
Yeah.
because I have heard that term before, and it makes a lot of sense.
No pun intended.
Or maybe I did intend it not.
I love it.
Anyway, let's
Yeah.
sorry, I just like almost knocked over my computer.
Oh, no worries.
Let's pivot a bit.
Yeah.
We were just talking about generative AI and AI, to how technology can be a friend or foe to work
Mm,
innovation. What is
yeah.
and I mean, I know, but I want you to tell our
Okay.
audience, what does our research say on this?
Yes, and we've got a couple points of research, I would say, at this point in time on this.
Mhm,
So let me start with where AI in particular, just really any sort
mhm,
of emergent tech, is a foe today. And we
mhm,
saw that this summer in the burnout research that we conducted, where if the end goal today is to drive more efficiency with AI, that is not working for the workforce. And here's the reason, because can AI be efficiency play? Absolutely. Do we need more efficiency in the workforce? Yes. Like those are to me are table stick answers,
Mhm.
but I feel like we're putting it in at the expense of having people learn, of giving people the runway to actually innovate and rethink how can they do this workflow or this job or task differently
Mhm.
because of AI. And so I think it becomes a foe if we're just trying to work faster and harder and do the exact same thing, but on repeat using this new tool. I think that's a short term gain. And I actually think it's causing a lot of friction and burnout in the workforce today because, some of our research, which was really, really shocking, was that like almost 3/4 of the workforce isn't even sure how to obtain the productivity gains that their leaders are expecting for AI. But now, where can AI be a friend to us? And I think to me, this is, and again, we're probably going to hear this a lot, but it's all about augmentation. And what we're actually seeing in our Upwork platform data are freelancers who are getting the highest value contracts, who are getting repeat contracts and getting that both that quantity and quality are those that are doubling down on AI. And those that are becoming specialized really within their domain and being able to augment their selves and the work in order to achieve something that's higher value. And so I think that to me is where the friend is. And I know like we've been talking about this for a long time of technology is supposed to unleash all this human potential and creativity and innovation, but all of the research continues to show a very disengaged burnout workforce, even as technology gets better. So, it really comes down to why are we using the technology? What's the end goal? And are you learning alongside of this and doing something differently because of this? But what did you see from your side on the research? What would you add?
I think one important point that stood out to me is
Yeah.
that um, the expectations of leaders are out of whack for this.
Yes.
I mean, leaders bring in the technology and they're like, okay, it's immediately going to improve productivity without giving workers a blueprint for how to move forward with that. And so, what you're doing, and I talked about this a little while ago, is that you are just adding technology on technology on technology. And a couple of years ago, we were terming this app fatigue
Yeah.
because it was mostly involved with a bunch of new applications. But the same thing can apply to AI. And the
Yep.
fact that we're just bringing in things, we're layering them on top of other things that don't integrate, and workers end up spending more time trying to figure
Yeah.
out how to use this tool than they could just go back to the old way they were doing it and be much more efficient. So I think it's it's a tough thing to balance because you do want
Yeah.
people to be upskilling in technology and you don't want people to be stuck in doing things the way they always did it. But at the same time, I think you have to keep those expectations reasonable and realize that there's going to be a learning curve.
Yep.
And by the way, this is with all employees. Gen Z tends to have the reputation because they're digital natives of, oh, all of a sudden, we'll just ask our Gen Zs or our Gen Zs can do this overnight. They're just
Yep.
as new to generative AI, for example, as the rest of us. So
Good
this is a
point.
universal thing that we need to be paying attention to and make sure if you're going to roll out a new tool that you have a really extensive communication plan, that you are directly applying it to the work that that employee needs to do, that you have support for it if someone is struggling with how to integrate this, and really just encourage to experimentation for people
Yeah.
to just go and play with it. And this also goes for leaders. Leaders
Yes.
who are not playing around with ChatGPT, try to see what it can do, who aren't playing around with live streaming. I mean, these are the types of things that it's a very good idea to model this idea that, hey, we can just play around with this stuff and see what kind of insights we can get or what kind of productivity gains we can get. But to just have again those rational expectations of exactly how much productivity is going to be gained in these beginning years where we're
Yep.
still trying to figure out how this technology is being integrated into the work that we've been doing. And in some ways it's going to be a complete shift
Yep.
from the way that we've been working for the last like couple
Yeah.
centuries. So
Yeah.
that's going to take some time.
Yes, exactly. Do unto yourselves some grace. But it's something you just said though that I want to call out to for those who are joining us. And again, like join us in the comments and let me know if this resonates for you. Because I have a simple question to our audience today, and that is: are you having fun at work? Are you experimenting? And are you playing? And I think for so long we have taken all of that out of our workplace in favor of this like very heads down corporate professional culture, from 9 to 5, it's all business. And I think that's actually done us a disservice in some ways because what I think the workplaces desperately need today is not, again, better, faster, cheaper. it's something new, it's something innovative, it's something creative. And at the end of the day, I just worry we've lost a little bit of that fun and play at work because of the way that we've designed work. And to your point, this is exactly what's needed today with generative AI. So
That's
I
the
think it's a
human
great
skills,
point.
right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the skill that we bring to the table is that intuition, creativity, judgment,
Yeah.
that I mean, AI is gonna have to be pretty smart to be able to, replace us there, and we are nowhere near that. So
Yes.
making sure you're in a position to have those traits shine through, then
Yep.
you'll be continuing to add value as the AI that's in your purview takes on more and more of the administrative responsibilities. You wanna be figuring out ways that you're still needed. And that's
Yep.
why I'm not worried about people losing jobs at all. I'm
Yep.
just worried about them upskilling enough to continue
Yeah.
to add value. We call that
Totally.
career durability. And, I think it's gonna become even more important as certain roles or parts of roles become obsolete. There's no reason you can't be gainfully employed, but you do have to think about it. What
Yep.
have I been doing in my job the last couple of years? What adjacent skills can I develop? And I just really want to tell quickly
Yeah.
the audience that I have had to do this in writing my Wall Street Journal column, for
Oh,
example,
interesting.
because that column is going to be able to be written by generative AI within the next couple of years. So if
Yeah.
I don't want to be out of a job there, I better figure out, okay, well, what adjacent skills do I need to develop to still add value? And I know a couple things.
Yeah.
One, the Wall Street Journal will not let a column go out without human eyes on it. And
Mm,
that there are certain people, when you interview them for a column, they don't want to talk to a machine. They don't want to
sure.
do an email. They want to talk to a person who they presume that they can trust. So
Yeah.
those are 2 skills, editing and, interviewing, and also fact checking is another one that,
Yep.
because we're we have a machine do that, it might be, incorrectly checking the facts,
Sure.
somewhere, because again, the machines are only as good as the data that they're given. So if I want to continue to add value to this process, I better look around and say, all right, what are the additional things I need to learn? So there's no
Yep.
reason I need to lose my job. I know that
Right.
humans are still going to be required in this process. And so I use myself as an example of really what everybody needs to be doing. And
Mm,
again, this is not a level specific thing. Even if you're a leader, you should be doing this.
right.
Figuring out how to use your dashboard to
Yep.
make informed decisions. That's just one example. But sorry to take
Yeah.
us off track a little, but
Oh, I
um,
love it, and I think if those that are joining, I think this is exactly, why they signed up
mhm,
for today because it's all about giving
mhm,
the practical advice
mhm,
and examples of what they can be doing, honestly, so
mhm,
we can all begin to work smarter next year.
mhm.
So, Alexandra, I know probably what's top of mind. We're in the year of predictions or that time frame. Everyone is, you're a futurist. You've made
Mhm.
a career out of this. I think the audience, and I'm actually equally myself, I'm curious to know your answer to this, but what's top of mind for you as we think about work in 2025 next year?
Well, top of mind for me, Kelly, in 2025 is the future of distributed work. To bring us
Mm.
full circle back to Humanity Works
Yep.
in 2018. And specifically, the fact that companies are mandating that people come back to the office full time, which I think is the wrong move.
Yeah.
I mean, even if everyone agrees to come back in this rigid manner, which they
Sure.
usually don't, by the way, do you really want an organization that is dependent on in person work? And think about how COVID came about. Think about some of the climate disruptions that we're already seeing. Is the pandemic that we just had going to be the last development that derails in person work?
Mm.
And I would wager that it is not. So to go back to an environment where we are dependent on people being there seems to be going backwards to me. Um,
Yeah.
and also, Kelly, one of the topics that I'm passionate about is distributed work on steroids, otherwise known as the metaverse.
Yes.
I want to share that my kids spent Thanksgiving evening with their Oculus headsets
No way.
riding rides in a virtual amusement park.
That's
Now,
wild.
as the technology advances and becomes more immersive and also cost efficient, it's kind of expensive now. It would be foolish for us to think we can't do more in the metaverse besides riding roller coasters. So I always, when talking about, I mean, this isn't necessarily a 2025 thing. A lot of people think the metaverse is a fad, but I do implore everyone to keep it in the back of their mind that when
Yeah.
we think about distributed work, it sometime in the near future, that will include a fully immersive virtual reality work environment. And probably the next time we have a major disruption, we're going to take that leap.
Yeah.
So just you don't have to do anything about it right now, but to dismiss it as a fad, I think is a mistake for sure. What about you, Kelly? What is your top prediction going into 2025?
Yes. First of all, because I used to work at Meta before Upwork, so I just have
Mhm.
to comment real quick on the VR because I think it's first of all just so cool. And I don't know how your experience was, but I've got a nephew who's young, and he just immediately picked up VR when I gave it to him a couple years ago in a way that was just so organic and natural. And I do have to say, like, I love that prediction. I have spent hours, like literally hours, in VR. First, when I was at Accenture, they moved all of their onboarding during the pandemic
Mhm.
into the metaverse. And so that was really cool just to see how that was going to take place. And then when I was at Meta, we were experimenting with a lot of meetings. And so I also agree with you. I think it got hyped up, probably because of the name change and everything else that was going on at Meta. But I do think like there's a lot of reason to believe that whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality is definitely going to be coming for distributed work. And I'm actually so excited about it.
Yeah.
Um, but to go like more short term in 2025, it's funny. I did a quick poll this morning on LinkedIn, and those of you who participated, I'm always grateful for any sort of interaction. I hate like one way dialogue on these social medias. But what I asked, what's the one thing we need to change? The number one response so far, again, this is not scientific data, but just again as some evidence of people wanting to spend more time learning. And I think, Alexandra, you actually articulated this really well with your Wall Street Journal example of I think next year has to be the year of upskilling for many people. I don't know if you've been following the headlines this week, but like Business Insider journalist Aki wrote this really interesting piece on really the declining middle manager class right now, and
I
that
saw
these jobs are just disappearing. I think Fortune had a fast follow article to that, but it's interesting when you just look at the data and you begin to see that there's this shrinking happening in a lot of the white collar professions.
Mhm.
And so, I think that's going to mean if whatever you're doing today, I think no matter what it is going to look different next year to some degree. Does that mean it's going to be a complete transformation? No. But is it going to continue to be this subtle change that continues to take place and really disrupt the way that you think about work and task? Yes, I see that as a researcher right now, how dramatically different my world is in the past 12 months
Mhm.
because specifically of AI. And
Mhm.
so, anyways, I think to me, 2025, we talk a lot about upskilling. We've talked about it for a long time, but I think we're going to continue to see the impact and a little bit of the pressure coming from a declining, white collar market in some ways of roles and tasks that, again, let's be honest, let's like just talk the truth. Efficiency is going to be the name next year, partly because of all the government emphasis that's happening right now.
Mhm.
But regardless, efficiency is going to be, I think, what we talk about a lot, and so leaders are going to be looking to find that efficiency, often in the form of headcount. And so again, we have to upskill and really rethink what we're working on to really quote unquote future proof what your career might look like. Um, so listen, we are almost at time, Alexandra. If you're up for it, I'd love just to do a quick lightning round with you while I
Yeah.
have you, because it just, again, it's like
Mhm.
so generous of you to come on today and talk with us. And I see, thank you for those of you who are in the chat. I see you on this side. If there's any burning
Yeah.
questions,
Everybody.
please be sure to put them in right now too, to see if we can get to them. If not, like I said, we'll be following up. But Alexandra, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Oh, I love this because I said this in my very first book when I first got into this field.
Yeah,
They don't teach corporate in college that it doesn't matter what you do; it matters what people think about what you do. And I know that now the buzzword is all self worth, and that is really important. I don't mean to put that down, but the reality of the business world, especially now, as you just said, Kelly, is that
yeah,
your reputation as an innovator, your
yeah,
reputation as someone who's competent and friendly, and willing to get their hands dirty and try out new things, that does matter. And so
yeah,
you want to be looking for ways to showcase through innovation, for example, how you can be forward thinking and truly beneficial and valuable to an organization that is constantly looking for efficiency and
mm,
constantly looking for what value humans are bringing to the table. So you need to be on the forefront in your area of focusing on those things. It's a
yeah.
great time.
Well, here's my second rapid round question to you because it's kind of a fast follow to that. What
Yeah.
are you currently upskilling? Like you gave a little bit with the Wall Street Journal article, but
Mhm.
what's top of mind for you right now? What are you currently reskilling on?
So I am upskilling on live streaming right now because
Yes.
as you and I were talking about, I've done a lot of webinars. Usually these
Yep.
are facilitated by other people and platforms. And being able to live stream content from my own platform using a service like we're using is something that I hadn't really considered. And I cannot wait to do this again when we have our 2025 research, because
Yes.
it's such a great way to get feedback and to share things kind of in real time so that we're not developing these research ideas in a vacuum. I love
Yep.
the idea of kind of polling people to see like what do you want to know about from a
Yeah.
research perspective, and then we use our human insights to figure out
Exactly.
what the data says and what info we can glean from it.
Yep. All right. Let's end on this. What are, and hopefully a little bit optimistic too, what are you most looking forward to in the new year?
I am looking forward to synchronicities. So synchronicities
Oh,
are like seemingly unrelated events that occur that can't be chalked up to coincidence.
yep.
And I see, and I've heard about this from a lot of people, not to get too woo woo, but that spiritually there's a lot going on right now, and the
Yep.
world is very complicated, but it's also very beautiful. And
Yep.
so, looking to see what opportunities um, reveal themselves that might not be in the traditional format or manner that we're accustomed to. And so that's what
Mm,
I want to leave everyone with is, yes, sometimes things can seem really stressful and dire, but you never know what the universe is going to offer you in terms of gifts. And
yep.
sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places.
I love that. And I think that's a wonderful note to end on.
Mhm.
So hopefully 2025 is also the year of synchronicity. And for those that are listening, to your point, come full circle, those that are sense making and taking the time and space to make sense of what's happening around them, I am sure that they will see more of that beauty that's happening in the midst of what feels like to be a lot of uncertainty and chaos as we head into the new year. So, Alexandra, for those of us who are joining, thank you to our audience. Where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
AlexandraLevitt.com is my website. At A Levitt is my X platform, and Alexandra Levitt on LinkedIn. And I would love to meet all of you. And thank you so much, Kelly, for having me. And thank you all for chiming in today. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm so glad I decided to upskill in this area.
Well, I am thankful as well. All right. Thanks for all for joining. We'll see you guys in the comments soon. Take care. Okay.
Ah,
You
how
did
was that?
great. You did wonderful. I've like the comments were like, we've got a lot of comments. It's just too hard. Like there was no direct questions, and some of like the comments were like, oh my God, I can't read a
I
paragraph right
couldn't see
now.
that. I was like, how is she reading those while
Oh,
trying to do this?
I have this screen up with it, which so I can just make sure like we just officially ended the LinkedIn live. Because
Oh,
we're on
we
like a
probably
30 second. Yeah.
um
Man,
cool.
I don't know if it's my internet